Welcome to our third video guide of Blackguards, Daedalus grim strategy RPG set in the world of The Dark Eye. In the last two installments, we gave you an introduction to the classes and shed some light on attributes, talents and abilities of your characters. And today, we're going to tackle the heavy stuff. We are well enough prepared to join the fray and talk about the combat system. First things first though. This guide refers to the rules implemented in version 1.3 of the game. If you haven't downloaded that already, you can find the patch on the game's official site, www.blackguards.de. When a battle in Blackguards starts, the scene will change and you'll see the battlefield and your party ready for action. The battle maps are divided into a number of hex fields your adventurers and their opponents move across. A combat log in the upper right part of the screen gives detailed information about what happened during the fight. The list of portraits on the lower edge of the screen shows health, astral points, how experienced your enemies are, as well as any status effects, called buffs or debuffs, and the initiative order. And that's already the first important keyword: initiative order. Initiative order, movement, and actions. No matter a friend or foe, each character has an own initiative value, determining when it is time to act. Whoever has the highest initiative goes first, but there's a twist. Each character rolls a d6 and adds the result to their initiative score. So there are days when even the most nimble of elves got up on the wrong side of the bed and may not go first in combat. Important fact: initiative is dynamic. That means if initiative scores change during combat, the order in which turns are taken will change accordingly. If every character had their actions, a new turn will start. The turn's ending is shown by an indicator. And now you're ready for action. When it's one of your character's turn, you can see their action radius split into a smaller, brightly highlighted area and a larger, darker area of hexes. The bright area indicates the radius in which a character can move and still perform an action, like attacking or using an object. The larger one indicates the maximum movement range. How far your action radius actually is determined by a character's speed value. By the way, a character can hold their action and take their turn at the end of an initiative phase. Attack, parry, and dodge. One of the core actions during combat is, big surprise, attacking. After all, we're not here for tea and biscuits. If you move the cursor over an attackable enemy, your hit chance will be displayed. Clicking now would execute an attack. If your character is not in weapon range, they will automatically close in on the enemy. In most cases, an opponent won't just stand there and wait to get a dwarven axe to the head. An important aspect of the Blackguards combat system is also to parry. With a parry, a defender completely avoids the attack. To parry, it's obligatory to hold a weapon in your hand. That's why some creatures without weapons can't parry at all. Parrying means the attacker's attack value is compared to the defender's parry value. If they're equal, the attacker's hit chance is 60%. Every point difference means a probability shift of 5% in the corresponding direction. The special thing about parrying is each character can only parry once per turn. It's a solid tactic to make an opponent use up their parry before you get out the big guns to hit them hard. Whether a character can still parry in the current turn is indicated in a mouse over text. Blue means the parry action is still available. If it's highlighted red, the parry action is already spent. Also an important fact, you can only parry melee attacks. If you want to parry a ranged attack, you need a shield equipped in your offhand. If your parry action is spent or your character simply isn't able to parry, dodging an incoming blow is the last resort. A successful dodge is usually much less likely than a parry. For your rolls, that means that the attack value is now compared to the dodge value. Other than that, dodge works pretty similar to parry. Performing a dodge happens on demand and without a limit per turn. Keep in mind, though, that each subsequent dodge after the first and within the same turn will have a -2 modifier. If a character attacks, there is a 5% chance of a critical hit. A crit always connects, damage is doubled, and it also automatically inflicts a wound. You can also glitch. There's a 5% chance that your character will miss, no matter how bad an enemy's defense might be. There's only one exception. If an opponent is prone, for example, through a knockdown effect, an attack will always succeed. Your character can do more than just jab or clobber things the most basic way possible. And for that, there are special abilities adding a little deadliness to your attacks. A death blow, for example, inflicts severe wounds. Using a special attack often brings along a penalty to attack rolls, thus using a special attack is somewhat riskier but also rewarding. To use them, however, a character needs to A. learn the special ability and B. has to equip a weapon able to perform the special attack. Damage, wounds, and more ways to die. If an attack connects, there's of course also damage inflicted. How many of your enemies' precious vitality points bleed away largely depends on your character's weapon, their strength, and the opponent's armor. Basically, the attacker does a damage roll according to the weapon stats, let's say a d6 plus 2, resulting in a damage range between 3 and 8. After that, add in a character's strength bonus depending on the weapon used. A dagger has a hard time benefiting from raw strength compared to a heavy slashing weapon. After that, armor rating comes into effect. Each armor provides damage mitigation in form of a resistance rating. That's how much % of damage are subtracted. Armor sets also provide a flat armor value that directly mitigates damage by its value. Apart from direct damage, inflicting wounds is also a good way to weaken your foes. Wounds can be caused by chance, if enough damage is caused, or they can be inflicted by the use of certain special abilities. A character can stack up to 3 wounds. The only protection against wounds is the willpower talent or treating wounds with bandages or powerful healing magic. There are also other ways to buff or debuff a character, for example by being poisoned. Status effects are indicated by blue or red arrows on a character's portrait. Hovering the cursor over them will show more details. Special combat styles. Ranged weapons have a few special features. The most obvious is perhaps that you gain range. Ranged weapons need ammunition and they reach as far as your character's line of sight. Attacking with a ranged weapon is connected to the ranged combat value and, as said earlier, a ranged attack can only be parried with a shield. However, the effective range depends on the actual weapon. Usually each weapon has a minimum and maximum reach. Anything above or below these parameters will result in a penalty to the ranged attack roll. Like a melee weapon, a ranged weapon can't exceed a hit chance of 90% if the target isn't prone. In regards of defense, you cannot parry while using a ranged weapon. Who needs a shield? Go for dual wield. Some of the bolder individuals seem to think along those lines and prefer to swing a one-handed weapon in each hand. Keep in mind that your offhand is much less likely to hit if you do not have the special ability dual wield. Dual-wield attacks are only executed with an ability using 2 weapons. This is basically the same as normal melee combat, only that your character now has 2 attack values. There is still only 1 to-hit roll. You either hit or miss with both weapons. And even a dual-wielding character can only parry once each turn. And then there's magic. Magic does not quite behave like your good old combat with steel and arrow. You can't dodge or parry a spell and magic can't miss. A spell simply succeeds or fails. That, again, depends on a character's base values. A Wrath of the Elements, for example, is linked to Charisma, Constitution, and Courage. All these attributes are checked with a dice roll with a d20. If all rolls are equal or lower than the attribute value, the spell goes off. If not, the spell's talent value can compensate bad dice results. And if that's not sufficient, the spell will fizzle. It doesn't consume astral points if it fails, though.
How is one supposed to concentrate around here?
In case of a success, astral points are spent accordingly. Depending on the level of the spell, there are also modifiers that are applied to the talent's value. A simple Ignifactious Bolt of Flame on level 1 gets a bonus of +2, but the same spell at level 4, the most powerful version of the Ignifactious that has an area of effect, is cast with a negative modifier of -8. To defend against magic, there is magic resistance that counteracts, for example, debuffs like Corpo Fesso. When casting such a spell, the resistance to magic is directly subtracted from the spell's talent value. So if your core professor has a value of 8 and your target a resistance to magic of 5, you only have 3 points left to compensate if the dice don't like you. Using your environment and talent tests. A huge factor in Blackguards battles is the environment itself. Very often you'll encounter elements that work in your character's favor or in worst case to their disadvantage. A simple example for such environmental elements are crates. Your characters can topple them, block paths, or even crush enemies underneath them. Interactive elements are usable by simply clicking them. This spends the character's action for the current turn. There are also elements on the battlefield you cannot use directly, but that can benefit you anyway if you know how. An ordinary waterway can turn into a hazardous trap. As characters pass the water, there's a chance to slip if they don't succeed in a body control test. This test works just as spellcasting described above, only with corresponding attributes for body control. This is also true for the talent Perception. Perception helps detecting hazardous hidden elements. From flammable swamp gas to deadly machinery, Blackguards offers many ways to turn your environment into a weapon. The battleground's layout itself also offers plenty room for tactics. You can block choke points in a cave to your advantage, for example. With good positioning, you can slay one enemy after another without breaking a sweat. So keep your eyes open, who knows what minor Terran feature may save your bacon. Gear. You can't go into a fight completely naked. Well, technically you could, but we don't recommend that. So in closure of this episode, we'll give you some advice regarding your equipment. Weapons have, aside from their obligatory damage stats, also other modifiers that influence attack, parry and initiative. They're also connected to a weapon talent, and each weapon also has restrictions in terms of special abilities you can perform with it. Your characters can swap between up to 3 weapon sets. Swapping weapons, however, spends a turn's action. Armors are designed to prevent damage. They all have armor-specific resistance ratings, and most armors are part of a set. If your character wears a complete matching set, the armor will provide a flat damage mitigation bonus, and encumbrance is significantly reduced. Speaking of which, encumbrance is an armor stat indicating how restraining or heavy the armor worn is. Encumbrance applies a negative modifier to attack, parry, dodge, and initiative. So don't wear too heavy armor, or spend adventure points on the special ability Armor Use. Also keep in mind that too many items carried around could result in an encumbrance penalty for the whole party. Another important part of your gear are belts, as they hold many useful items a character can carry into battle. Good belts can hold up to 4 items. Belt slots are for healing and astral potions, throwing weapons, poisons, and traps. Without a belt, you can't use them in combat. Did you win an especially tricky battle by lateral thinking? Or did you use other, even dirty tricks to make your party's life easier? Well, tell us! Right here or in the forums. Or visit us on Facebook, our forums, and of course the official Blackguards homepage. There you can find the most recent news regarding Blackguards and Daedalic. If you want to read the content of this video again, there's also a text guide. You still didn't join the adventure? Then off you go and download your digital version at Steam or GOG.com. We hope you're now ready to take on any battle in Aventuria.